What's that coming from the top ropes with the steel chair? Oh my god, it's another stealth neuvillette buff! Hello! We've got a brand new endgame on the way, and maybe depending on the server you're in, it might already be out. In fact, you're probably watching this when it's already out, because I think I'm posting this like only a few hours before it comes out in North America. So whatever, it's already here. Yay, yippee, woo! And yeah, cool, nice. We get a new endgame mode, more things to do, but the coolest part about it to me is that most of it is completable in co-op. You do miss out on a few rewards if you end up doing it in co-op, but whatever, who cares? Endgame that's playable in co-op. That's so cool, that's so neat. And I am someone who, you know, if you couldn't tell, self-report, I played this game a lot. Before I stopped using Epic Games, it tracked me at 1,400 hours, and probably about 1% of those hours were spent in co-op, if that. But from what little time I have spent in co-op, I've picked up that it is a very different game. Genshin is balanced around its single-player experience. Not a big surprise, we haven't had any endgame co-op content until literally the day I am posting this. So I did a little stream. I will probably do another little stream on the day I am posting this, doing the actual endgame in co-op. So if you want to see that, I don't know, stick around. Anyways, I did a stream where I tested a ton of weird co-op stuff, and I learned a lot of things, and I would like to share those things. So I'm just going to start off with some key differences. I am also specifically talking about 4-player co-op here. Yes, you can do 2-player, where each player controls 2 party members, or 3-player, but I want to focus on 4-player because that's what's most different. And I also think that's what a lot of people are going to be doing. And in all honesty, shut up, be quiet, Seat Lolly. And in all honesty, 2-player kind of just plays like single player. It's just 2 people making their own little teams. Yes, you can do certain synergies or combos, but it doesn't affect your team building as much as 4-player does. Anyways, basics. First big difference, energy needs do not exist. They do. You still have some energy needs, but everybody's energy needs in co-op are greatly reduced. In co-op, everybody gains energy from everybody else's skills. 4 players all spamming their skills off of cooldown generates a lot more energy than a traditional single player team does. Additionally, characters get more energy if they're the ones on field when you collect the particles. And in 4-player co-op, nobody is ever off field. Everybody's on field all the time, so they get that extra energy. So that's number 1. Energy needs way lower than they are in single player. The thing about nobody ever being off field kind of leads into my next point, where you can't activate effects that require a switch. Really, the 2 that come to mind are Widsith, which activates when your character enters the field, and TTDS, which activates when your character leaves the field. Neither of these conditions can be met in 4-player co-op, so Widsith is a lot worse. It just flat out doesn't have a passive. It's only a stat stick. TTDS is the same, except it's not a stat stick, so it's even more useless. There are probably other effects that I'm forgetting, but these 2 are probably the biggest changes. TTDS is worthless. Widsith is only its stats. It doesn't have its crazy busted passive. And on a side note, Lost Prayer is actually very good. It's essentially a permanent 32% damage bonus. Not insane, but pretty nice. Oh yeah, and I also forgot, Sack Jade is not a good weapon. I'm not gonna go through everything, I'm just kind of poking at things as I see them, but you lose the buff if you're on field too long, so it also doesn't have a passive. One notable exception, I had to test this because I just didn't know, Chiori. I talked about it in the Yunjin video a lot. If you press E with her, you can press E again, and then you'll swap to your next party member and she'll gain a coordinated attack. So what happens if you don't have another party member to swap to? Yippee, yippee. Thank you to my friends and members of Discord for helping me test things out. Hooray! Chiori can still get her coordinated attack in co-op, she just doesn't swap units. Cool, it works. Glad that they didn't ruin the character in co-op. Now my final little bit of general advice that has to do with the fact that everybody is on a field all the time. Characters that don't have downtime are very valuable. There are plenty of characters, I don't know, let's just go Jean here, because I expect it to. What? She does not have a burst duration. Why is there no duration listed for Jean's burst? What? Am I going insane? Okay. Whatever, I guess. Let's just go to Sayu. 12-second burst, 20-second cooldown. If she is casting burst off of cooldown, her burst is only up 60% of the time. Kind of the same thing goes for her skill. If you end up doing the max hold duration, which is 10 seconds, you get an 11-second cooldown. It's on cooldown for longer than it's up. I'm not picking on Sayu in particular here, like half the units in the game are like this. If you choose them, there are going to be periods where you just stand around doing nothing. What I'm trying to say with all this is that bow and catalyst units get an inherent little buff, because even if their skill and burst are on cooldown, they can still apply their element through the charge attack with bow users and through the normal and charge attacks with catalyst users, and maybe deal a little bit of damage. Additionally, this makes infusers a little bit more powerful. And when I say infusers, I mean literally just Chongyun, because Candace's infusion does not work in co-op. And don't worry, I didn't forget about Bennett. We'll get to Bennett. It's gonna be in like 30 seconds, I won't make you wait. But yeah, Bennett and Chongyun supplying other units with the ability to deal reasonable elemental damage while their other stuff is on cooldown. Nice little utility, makes Chongyun a bit more worth thinking about. You were already gonna run Bennett, so it's just a cool upside. Now you are required to C6 your Bennett because I said so. Last general guideline before we get into specific units. After doing a few hours of testing, I found out it is really hard to do specific setups in co-op. Admittedly, I was doing this on stream, so there's a little bit of a delay involved there. But I'm just gonna say, in general, trying to do teams where you set up very specific reactions or very specific circumstances, unless you're in a Discord call with nothing but like hardcore abyss grinders, I really don't think it's gonna happen. What I mean to say by this is you don't really want to use teams that care about specific auras or want to react specific hits. You're gonna be much better off with teams that just spam all their elements and get reactions or damage out of that in some way. This is big news for, I'm gonna say 5 archetypes. Maybe I'll add one on later, who knows? Those archetypes. Overload with Chevreuse. As long as you're triggering overloads, you get free res shred for both elements. If you bring Bennett, she can infuse her normal attacks. She also has some pretty reasonable multipliers in her kit. Only level 6, 500% multiplier on the burst. Overcharge ball is, wow, more than the level 6 burst at level 11. DPS Chevreuse is like maybe gonna be a real thing. And if Chevreuse is good, then of course Escoffier is also good. She does the exact same thing for Hydro and Cryo, except she doesn't require that reactions happen, so you can even go full mono Cryo if you want. Next two archetypes are Aggravate and Spread. These are really heavily reaction-based archetypes, but they're archetypes that don't care about the aura. You just kind of throw all your elements on the enemy and do a bunch of damage. They're very easy to play. Even the single player teams have damage contribution coming from a lot of different units, so the 4-player teams are going to be pretty nice. And last is Electrocharge. It's pretty much just what's going on with Aggravate and Spread, except you don't actually really care about the reaction damage. Have someone play an Animo unit. Oh, that's also another thing. VV is going to be way less of a hassle to use, because if someone's playing an Animo unit on VV, then they'll just be swirling all the elements that are present all the time. Electrocharge, just have 3 characters of the Electro or Hydro elements, get a VV user, preferably one that can do some on-field damage like Hazo or Lanyan, although I guess without Faruzan it doesn't really matter that much. You probably even go like Aoife if you wanted to. And then yeah, go ham. Just hit the guy. Hit the guy a ton of times. You get the point. And I'd like to give an honorable mention to Physical. All of Mika's buffs are full party in co-op, so like, I don't know. Maybe we can do something with that. I don't have high hopes, but against my better judgment, I do have some hopes. Now, for specific characters that do get a little bit better in co-op, I mean, Mika, for the aforementioned reasons, all of his buffs are full party, so like potentially you can do some weird physical stuff with him. And let's just go to Bennett. As sad as it is to say, circle impact units are pretty good in co-op, because a lot of the units who aren't circle impact, like let's just pull up Eonsan here, she specifically boosts the attack of your current active party member. In co-op, that is only yourself. Yeah, let's also get this out of the way. Eonsan is gonna kind of suck garbage in this mode. She can only buff herself, and she really doesn't do anything with that buff. She could technically spam her electrocharged attack, but 91%? That's not real. That's fake. This is a fake number. You've never seen it before. She doesn't really have much compelling on-field damage. She literally cannot use her skill in her burst. If she has her buff out and she uses her skill, she'll cancel her buff. And also it specifies her burst doesn't track her own movement. She doesn't have any ways to regain Night Soul in co-op. So yeah, Eonsan kind of sucks garbage, but Bennett is better than he's ever been. He throws a circle on the ground. As long as you stand in the circle, you get the buff. Giving Bennett buff to 4 characters at once is a little bit nuts. He also does have a compelling way to DPS. His skill has a fine enough multiplier, and his 2 passives make it so that in his burst, his skill has a 2-second cooldown. If you build him right, spamming this can really rack up a lot of damage. Having Bennett do decent personal damage while also doing all the stuff he normally does for the entire party, kinda crazy. He's a full party attack buffer, he's a full party healer, and he's a competent DPS himself. We just cannot escape him. Oh yeah, and I don't know how I forgot, but you know, he infuses everyone with pyro if he has C6. So if other units were just going to be doing physical normal attacks, well, whoop-de-doo, you get a little upgrade. Bennett is disgusting. In this mode in particular, but also in the rest of the game. I'm just going to kind of bounce between units based on whatever I kind of was talking about when I wrapped up with one unit. Talked about infusing with Bennett, let's talk about Chongyun. He has a cool synergy, makes all your normal attacks cryo. In Escoffier teams, that's pretty nice. Convert all your would-be useless normal attacks into a damage type that your team is building for, and that is res shredded. Real cool, real nice upgrade. Additionally, on the note of his C2, the reason why this isn't really great in single player is that 15% cooldown reduction isn't enough to speed up the rotation of a team. There have been some niche use cases like with Malwika or Arlecchino, but that's like kinda it. In co-op, this matters a lot more. Even if you get this buff in single player, you usually only end up casting your skills and bursts once in each rotation, but in co-op, rotations are out the window. They don't exist. Everyone is just spamming whatever they have off cooldown all the time, and getting a 15% reduction on that can be pretty meaningful. There are characters like Farina where it doesn't really matter. Both her skill and her burst are long-lasting abilities whose durations are longer than their cooldowns. But with a character like Rosaria, her skill is an instance of damage that happens immediately when you press it, and her burst is not longer than its cooldown. It's not 8 seconds, it's 12 seconds at C2, but it has 3 seconds of downtime. So while standing in Chongyun's field, Rosaria gets 15% more skills, and she gets a few seconds less of downtime. The next unit I'm going to talk about had what I found to be the best synergy with this, that being Shenhe. Burst only lasts 12 seconds on a 20-second cooldown, so you get less downtime on your burst, and she has an immediate effect on her skill, so with that cooldown reduction, she can get more skills. Why this is so important on Shenhe in particular, we need to talk a little bit about why she's become relevant recently. And I have to go right back to the talents because they are where I have to point things out. So let's talk about her quills. Everyone knows them. She essentially gives some extra motion value to your cryo characters. When your party members deal cryo damage, she slides in there, throws a little bit of her own attack onto the equation before crit, before damage bonus, before res shred. That's how this damage buff works. But she only buffs 5 instances of damage on a tap skill and 7 on a hold skill. That's not a lot. The reason why she's so good in Ayaka teams is that Ayaka teams have 20-second rotations and they're not strict on swapping. Ayaka is a quick swap DPS, she can swap out whenever she wants. 20-second rotation plus a quick swap team means that Shenhe can get 2 skill presses in Ayaka teams. That goes from only 5 hits buffed to 10 hits buffed. Essentially, every press that she does, not only does she get the base damage of the hit, although that's not really that important, but she effectively gets out more motion value by buffing more hits. That's also why she's so good in Escoffier teams. They were doing Escoffier, Farina, Skirk. Even though she only gets to do 1 skill in those teams, because her buffs are full party, she's affecting both Escoffier and Skirk. So she's still getting 10 hits buffed with 1 skill press. Although I guess you'd want to do a hold skill there and get 14 hits buffed, but that's just making my point even stronger. She's good with Ayaka because Ayaka allows her to buff multiple times. She's good with Escoffier because Escoffier allows her to buff multiple units. In co-op, you get the best of both worlds. If you build one of those aforementioned mono cryo Escoffier teams with a Chongyun, maybe you could even throw a Farina in there and get her infused if you're getting crazy. Probably actually what you want to do, come to think of it. She is going to be buffing 4 units, all doing cryo damage, and she's able to buff them every time her skill is off cooldown. Don't need to think about rotations at all. That's why Chongyun is so great with her. Not only does he give a cryo infusion, so he allows other units to deal cryo damage, including Shenhe herself, but his cooldown reduction allows her to buff more times. Sorry that I'm spending so much time on Shenhe. I just got her. I think she's cool. I like her. I genuinely think she is going to be crazy in co-op. Anyways, so on, so on. I keep wanting to talk about catalyst units, but I don't think there's a ton to talk about there. As I mentioned before, they don't have any downtime. As mentioned before, they can do some normal attacks to get some damage in application. Yai has felt pretty nice in co-op. I was playing a bit of Yanfei. That was a lot of fun. Did some silly stuff with Ganyu, where we were both kind of melting off of each other. That's a fun little thing you can do with melt, is just have everybody spamming DPS at one character, and when a melt happens, it happens, and you get some free damage. Not fantastic, but it's fun. Oh, I'm being dumb. I don't know how I forgot about Yunjin. There's a little less that I can immediately think about doing with Yunjin. Shenhe, I kind of have an idea as to why she's so good. Yunjin, I'm sort of gambling. Similar to Shenhe, her buffs are also full team. Everyone gets this normal attack buff. I don't know about her constellations. I guess it would make sense. Everyone just gets to do a ton of more normal attack damage. You're kind of sacrificing a bit, because if you want to make a good buffing Yunjin build, then she's probably not going to be doing very much damage herself. Whereas, Shenhe, her buff scales with attack, the rest of her stuff scales with attack, so you can kind of just do... I actually did, I don't know if it's still equipped, it's not. I was running a gladiators build on a cryo-infused Shenhe. That was a lot of fun. There's definitely something like that you can do with Yunjin, but I don't think I quite know what it is. Shout out to her. She probably is good, but I don't know how. I know in the intro I said co-op is a neuvillette buff. Not really, not particularly. It was kind of just for the bit. If you rotate with him right, if you get enough energy recharge on him, then he can have pretty much infinite Hydro beams. He's also entirely self-sustaining. He doesn't really need a ton of buffs to do good damage, which gives him more damage if he has less synergistic teammates. This dude is just going to be the king of the random lobbies. If we do get random lobbies, I kind of doubt that we'll get that. But if you have a ton of insane teammates who have no idea what they're doing and are just picking characters they want, neuvillette is probably your best bet. Fully heals himself with his charged attacks, has a ton of base HP, gets buffs from any Hydro reaction, and if you cycle him correctly, he can just have infinite Hydro beams, one after another. Surprise, surprise, neuvillette is still good. I did mention Farina before, and she's still gonna be Farina, she's still gonna fundamentally be pretty stupid, but the fact that she can't really do anything with field time, she just kind of waits for her pets to kill things and waits for someone else to heal to make her burst buff everyone. She's gonna lose access to her best DPS set. Granted, you still have tenacity, which is pretty crazy and is gonna be good with any attack scaler. And it's not like the set is useless if you play her on field, but going from 70% damage bonus to 45, it's a little rough. Now I'm reminded of the other troop user that will be a little bit worse. This one comes from some personal experience. Doing some aggravate stuff on my stream, and Fischl's actually not that great. Number one, she loses Golden Troop, so, that hurts. But also, her Ascension 4 passive. This is what makes her so good in aggravate. Whenever you trigger an aggravate, she deals a little lightning bolt, 80% of her attack. This thing has a half-second cooldown. In single player, that's fine, because that's usually about as much Electro as you can apply. You're probably going to be aggravating less than once every half second, so that cooldown isn't really an issue, and she's able to get a ton of supplemental damage every time your character triggers an aggravate. That is not the case in co-op. More people applying Electro means more aggravates, and it's too many aggravates for Fischl to keep up with. There are actually a fair amount of aggravates that don't get this additional portion of Fischl damage. She still does a ton of damage, but she doesn't scale as well as she does in single player. And that's why, hear me out, this is maybe my favorite discovery from the co-op stream. I think Lisa's gonna take over. Okay, maybe not take over. Maybe Fischl is still really, really good. She's just not as good as she is in single player. But playing Lisa in co-op honestly felt kind of good. One of the massive issues, the massive issues with Lisa, big, stinky, disgusting 80 cost burst, and she doesn't generate energy with her tap skill. only her hold skill, which has a 16-second cooldown, and it takes like a full 2 or so seconds to charge. I don't know, you have to stand still for a long time. It feels bad, it wastes a lot of time. That is not the case at all in co-op. She can hold skill just fine because it's not like she's wasting time for your on-fielders. She's the only character on field. Might as well do a hold skill while she's there. She's a catalyst user, so she can trigger some reactions while she's waiting for this to come off cooldown. She's also an electro unit. Oh, whoops, whoopsie daisy, don't look. Fine, whatever. These aren't the right pieces, but it gets my point across. She can use Thundering Fury to reduce the massive cooldown of her 16-second skill. She also just gets a ton of extra energy from the rest of your party. Her energy needs are so low in co-op. It actually feels good to play. So yeah, she can do a little bit of on-field damage, she can do a little bit of kind of weird nuking stuff, not great, but it exists. And she actually has her burst, which is important because her burst, it does a fine amount of damage, it does a lot more in aggravate. Most importantly, it does that defense shred. The reason why I bring this up in contrast with Fischl, Fischl's A4 passive can't keep up with every aggravate. There are gonna be aggravates your teammates are triggering that aren't boosted by Fischl's extra instance of damage. That's kind of how I like to think about it. It's not like a damage buff to the aggravate, it's just extra damage that you get when aggravating, which effectively is what an aggravate buff is, but you know what I'm talking about. She's not getting her extra damage on every aggravate, but a 15% defense shred will affect all aggravate damage. I mean, maybe Fischl is still going to be better in aggravate, but me and the people who I was testing with all said that Lisa felt better than Fischl in co-op aggravate. Also usable in overload and electrocharge, so look out for the new Lisa meta. Gujo Sara is an interesting option as an AoE buffer. Similar to Bennett, you can get her buff on multiple units. Might be a little weird for team building because you still want to go electro carries with her, but I don't know. I also kind of found her fun to on-field, and her C1 actually has a use now. She gets 2 of these Tengo Jirai things, one from her C2 that she drops on the ground, another from her charged attack. So if you stagger it out, you can actually get the cooldown reduction twice, go to an 8-second cooldown on her skill, deal some nice damage, and buffs your party while doing so. She was fun to mess around with, but again, I think kind of like Yunjin, I haven't quite figured out what's so good about her, but I can sense something good. I can sense Sara might be good. I didn't test this, but on-field Diona might be a real thing. People know she infamously ascends with cryo damage bonus for some reason, and she has, I don't even know, is it, no, it's not a passive, it must be a constellation. Yeah. If she stands in her burst field, her charge attacks charge faster. And she's got that C6, 200 EM, real nice for the whole party. So I don't know. You could do like a weird sub DPS melt Diona while she's buffing someone else type of thing. That might be goofy. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll be the goofy one. Oh, actually, while I'm hating on Fischl, on-field physical Fischl will become real again. I swear this on my name. Don't actually do that. Don't do that. But I guess it's a little bit more viable in co-op, especially with Mika. Especially with Mika. Who knows? Maybe physical will be revived. Oh, of course I have to talk about my queen here. I mean, not a crazy amount to really talk about here. It's just that she is an attack scaling off-fielder. So by running her with Bennett, she can become an attack scaling on-fielder. Same goes for Escoffier. And also, maybe another unit in the near future. Who's to say? Not me. I don't say anything ever. Let me open up the character archive to make sure I'm not missing anyone, because I have one more thought before I end the video off, and I want to make sure I don't miss anyone noteworthy. Sijun, let's check how your buff works. Still probably not a great character. Oh yeah. Actually, this is just straight useless, because it's only elemental skills if your off-field party members deal damage, and no one can be off-field, so stay away from Sijun. I mean, you can still play her, she's still awesome, she's still the freaking goat, but she'll be a little bit worse than usual. I was gonna say even worse, but I don't want to be that mean. I like Sijun, but I also am comfortable with the reality that she's not all that great. I need to do a little bit more work on Nilou. We tested a Nilou Bloom team, and it seems like potentially it could be pretty good because you have 4 people triggering reactions at the same time. It didn't seem notably great, but maybe it was just a bad Nilou team, so I don't know. She might actually be one you want to look out for. Ayato's burst gives a buff, I guess. Yoimiya's burst gives a buff, I guess. Ganyu's burst gives a buff, I guess. Albedo's burst gives a buff, I guess. Wow, they really just like doing that. Just throwing like random nothing buffs onto characters' bursts, whereas always in a passive talent too. Actually, with Ayato's, it's linked to the skill level. So you actually have to level his burst to increase the damage bonus. So that sucks. I think that's it. I don't think anybody else... I mean, you know, I definitely could have missed someone, but to my knowledge, I don't think anyone is particularly better in co-op. The one big disappointment that I am going to end off on here is chongyun, because her burst has a limit. 8 stacks of Adeptal Assistance, it just means 8 plunges. In her burst, you get to do 8 plunge attacks. Unlike with Shenhe and Yunjin's buff, which counts each individual character for the limit of the buff. So like Shenhe, she'll buff 5 hits on each character. For Yunjin, she'll buff I think 30 hits on each individual character. chongyun does give her plunge attack buff to the entire party, but you only get 8 plunges between all of you. I mean, I guess it makes sense, because maybe it would be a little ridiculous to just have 4 people plunging 8 times, but it would have been really cool, and I don't think it would have been better than Mawika, so... You will have to dedicate 1 or 2 members of your party as the actual plungers. She's still pretty good, you know, she's still an Animo Catalyst unit, and a full party healer, for as much as all that's worth, but the fact that she only gives 8 plunges in total, and not 8 plunges to each party member, makes me a little sad. I actually also just remembered one last character that I would like to talk about, so let's end up on a happy note. Faruzan. Faruzan. My opinion of Faruzan just keeps getting better and better, and I already loved her. Faruzan is legitimately like top 5 favorite characters in the game at this point. Anyways, on-field Faruzan, actually pretty good. She has a ton of buffs in her kit, and all those buffs apply to herself. And she has some decent multipliers going on. She can do a skill into this pressurized collapse on her charge shot. At C1, she gets 2 of those charge shots, and the cooldown of that skill is really freaking short. So by doing skill into 2 charge shots, she almost has her skill off cooldown again. I've also said this before, but all of her buffs are in her kit. They're not in her artifacts, which leaves you free to run a DPS set on her. So she can buff a full party of Animo units while doing a pretty solid amount of damage herself. We love you, Faruzan. We love you, Faruzan. Really great character. I wish all of her utility was not locked behind C6. Although to be fair, because she is an on-fielder, and because co-op generates so much more energy, Faruzan is going to be way, way better in co-op if you don't have her C6. Like, she'll be an actual, really solid option. You're going to be able to get burst, and you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. C6 is still nice, because it gives you a little extra buff and some extra damage, but it's not necessary for co-op Faruzan, which is probably what I should have led with, because that actually is like a really big thing. That Faruzan will not need her C6 to be good in co-op. Okay, bye. Again, I fucking did it. I did it again. I'm like, oh, this will be a short video. This will be an easy video to make. Hour and 20-minute recording.